Teachers who display or give a student a book deemed unallowed could face up to 5 years in prison. You heard that right. 5 years in prison for handing a child a book.
The law requires books to be free from pornography, instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through 3rd grade, and discrimination in a way that an individual by virtue of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin is inherently racist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Flamer by Mike Curado was found in Broward, Collier, Hillsborough, Marion, Seminole, and Volusia County schools. The camp the boys go to in the book has an island that the book says looks like a frying pan, but we're all certain it looks like a balls. It also contains a shower scene with a group of boys where a young man gets an erection. Another where a boy watches porn and asks, "Why is there so much hair?" while noting that those are so big. And if none of this causes you to pause, there's another section where a group of boys masturbate together and are pressured to ejaculate into a bottle. Let's Talk About It by Erica Moen and Matthew Nolan was found in a Broward County school and contains graphic depictions of how to masturbate for males and females, while also including an entire section for anal sex with an encouragement to use a butt plug. Even more startling is the guide on how to sex for children, encouraging them to send photos that don't include your face, hide your birthmarks and scars, and edit out your piercings and tattoos. Books by Rupi Kaur, such as Homebody, Milk and Honey, and The Sun and Her Flowers, have been found in 15 schools. Homebody says masturbation is meditation, and speaks about how the writer wants someone to look me in the eyes when you're down there eating for your life. These books are clearly not just conversation starters about the birds and the bees. They are pushing an agenda. Genderqueer was found in Orange, St. Lucie, and Hillsborough County schools, and is a graphic novel depicting masturbation and encouraging trans surgery by equating the scars from top surgery, the cutting off of females' breasts, with a tattoo.
Let me ask you, what does Governor Ron DeSantis not know of Black history and the Black experience when he says that slavery and the aftermath of slavery should not be taught to Florida school children?
I don't know what he knows and what he doesn't know, but I know this.
There are concerns with the current syllabus for a new advanced placement course for Florida's high schoolers called AP African American Studies. The state education board citing issues with 6 topics in the syllabus, including coursework on the reparations movement, Black queer studies, and movements for Black lives. A spokesperson for Governor Ron DeSantis says the course was rejected because it, quote, lacks educational value and historical accuracy.
The latest to be pulled for review, a book about baseball legend Roberto Clemente. A passage in Roberto Clemente, Pride of the Pittsburgh Pirates, references the racism he faced in the U.S.
A is for activists, where L is for LGBTQ, T is for trans, and Z is for Zapatista, a far-left Mexican terrorist group. This book was found in 6 school districts: Broward, Hillsborough, Orange, Lake, Pinellas, and Monroe.
Listen, I'm going to say this one more time. Elements of critical race theory are not taught to 5-year-olds. It's not taught to 8-year-olds. It's not taught to 10-year-olds.
Not My Idea, a book about whiteness, which was found in elementary schools in Orange, Lake, Hillsborough, and Broward counties. We will not teach that racism is a white person's problem. We will teach that it is a problem for all to tackle. We will not inject into a young child's mind that a contract binding you to whiteness will get you stolen land, stolen riches, and special favors.
Good morning. Thank you. Good to be back. Thanks so much. Hello, how are you doing? Good to see you. Nice dress. You look pretty. What? Okay. Thanks for coming. Well, thank you all for being here. I didn't have to view what you just viewed, so I'm glad I didn't. But I think that we need to have truth prevail. And so today we're going to be exposing, we've already exposed with that video, I think, this idea of a book ban in Florida, that somehow they don't want books in the library. That's a hoax. And that's really a nasty hoax, because it's a hoax in service of trying to pollute and sexualize our children. We'll also talk about the Black history hoax, the idea that somehow we're not teaching about that, and not teaching about things like racial discrimination. So we're going to go through all of that. We've got some great folks here with us, and I want to recognize them. We have Manny Diaz, who's our Department of Education Commissioner in the state of Florida. Tia Bess from Northeast Florida. We have Julie Gebhards, a parent from here in Hillsborough County. From the school board here, Dr. Stacy Hahn, welcome. And her fellow school board member from the other side of the state in Broward, and I don't know who has it more difficult wading through those on those boards, but Tori Alston from Broward County. And then we have from the Central Florida Urban League, Glenn Gilzine, so thank you for coming. So we have seen over many weeks, so first of all, I think that video, I think some of the news had to cut the feed because it's graphic. And we've heard different things put out. There was a Duval County school video where they took a video of empty bookshelves, and they say the state of Florida doesn't want books, they're trying to censor books and all this stuff. Turned out that was a hoax. Turned out that individual who did that in the school system was fired. You've also had other things where they've tried to say that you're not allowed to teach certain basic things that we require. Some of those folks have been put on discipline and will likely lose their jobs. So a lot of that, what's been going on, is an attempt to create a political narrative. And it's a false political narrative, and that's bad enough as it is, I guess. But for me, the important thing is that's a false narrative in service of using our schools for indoctrination rather than education. And we've drawn a very firm line in the sand in Florida about that. We believe in strong, rigorous education. We believe in the rights of parents to be involved in the education of their children, and therefore have enacted curriculum transparency legislation so that the parents know what books are being used in the classroom, what books do their kids have access to, and then they have procedures where they can say, wait a minute, some of the stuff you saw up there, that is pornographic. Why would we have that in a media center with 10-year-old students? It's just wrong. And a lot of parents now have been empowered to make sure that these are appropriate environments. I mean, we have 6, 4, and 2-year-old at home. I just think parents, when they're sending their kids to school, they should not have to worry about this garbage being in the schools. They should just know that you're going to get a good education. We're going to do well to really do the basics and have our kids succeed. That's what they want. They don't want the garbage. And the idea that that's even in there is inappropriate for these young kids. But they are using your tax dollars to put that in. How is that an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars to put that in? So what you've seen is a lot of false narratives put out. And I think, though, there is a concerted effort to bring some of this sexualization into the classroom, particularly in these young grades. I mean, we did do Parents' Rights in Education bill, I think, as many of you know, but even when you're talking about 12, 13-year-olds, to see some of that stuff in there, I think most parents would say absolutely not. You know, parents can have those discussions when they think it's appropriate with their kid, but to have that is wrong. And we've been very clear about that and how we're gonna handle that. You've also heard some things about the ability or the availability of African American history in Florida. And this grew out of, there was a proposed course that the College Board was sending to different states. It hadn't even been approved yet. And they were soliciting feedback, so it's still in the experimental stages. But our Department of Education said, this is rejected. It clearly goes against our standards about opposing ideological indoctrination. And so we identified the reasons why. So you just tell me whether you think this is something that is appropriate for an African American history course. So they had a thing about queer studies, right? They put that in this course. And this is the quote from one of the readings there, quote, "We have to encourage and develop practices whereby queerness isn't surrender to the status quo of race, class, gender, and sexuality. It means building forms of queerness that reject the given realities of the government and the market." And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, why aren't we talking about Frederick Douglass? You know, why aren't we talking about things that I think can really matter? And so you had a whole bunch of other things. A lot of this was informed by, I would say neo-Marxism, heavy ideological bent. And so that clearly is not something, that we're going to do. But what they would say then is, because this ideologically driven course was not something that met our standards, that somehow Florida prohibited teaching anything about black history. And that is not only not true, Florida law does the opposite. We require that. All the aspects from the colonies all the way to the present. And in fact, since I've been governor, we've expanded that. We did the 1920 Election Day riots. We now have that as being something that has to be discussed, as well as the impact of Jim Crow laws. And so we did a law last year called the Stop Woke Act, Stop Wrongs Against Our Kids and Employees Act, and it was employment protections that if you go to work, that you don't have to sit through a discriminatory training. You have a right to opt out about that. We're litigating that. We'll eventually win on appeal like we normally do. But then also K-12. We're not going to do things like critical race theory. And so a lot of people were happy that we did that. Some people tried to criticize. But what we also did in that bill is we required the state of Florida schools to provide instruction about prejudice and racism throughout American history. We actually didn't necessarily have it that strongly in our law prior to this. And so when they say things about, oh, we have to take a book about Hank Aaron out because he talks about suffering racism and that would violate the Stop Woke Act. Understand, they're lying to you. That is not true. And in reality, none of those books had to be removed. It was just it was a fake hoax. But not only would it not be removed or violate standards, it actually tracks with us saying we need to teach these stories. And you know what else we did in the Stop Woke Act? We required teaching stories stories of inspiration regarding, Floridians, but particularly African Americans. And I think that's a better way to lift people up. Showcase people that have defied the odds and have made great contributions. Don't tell somebody that you're oppressed and you have no chance in life. Why would you work hard if you don't have a chance to be able to do? So it's a positive view. It's showing that people have been able to break down barriers and do great things. And I think that is the way we need to be doing it, rather than always trying to say that the country's bad and all that stuff. Yeah, you got to teach. The facts are the facts, the history's the history. But I think our entire history regarding not just black history, but everything, been a lot of obstacles, been a lot of examples when those ideals weren't always lived up to, but people fought and people were able to ultimately win in the end across a wide variety of these issues. So I think that is a great posture. So here, though, when they talk about the Stop Woke, here's what it actually does prohibit in terms of what we're doing. And if anyone in this room thinks any of this is appropriate, then raise your hand and let's have this debate right here. So what the Stop Woke Act says is, we're not going to teach our kids that they are inherently racist on the basis of their race or color or natural origin. Does anyone think the babies are born racist? I don't think so. I think they're told either to respect people or not, and that's how you end up with this. The other thing we say is in the law that we are not going to teach that any one race is inherently superior to another race. Is that something that we want to be teaching our kids? I don't think so. We also say that, of course, I think everyone has to agree with this, it's wrong for discrimination on the basis of race, color, natural origin, etc. Also say in the Stop Woke Act that it is wrong to teach that concepts like merit and hard work are basically racist concepts. In reality, we believe merit and hard work are important so that people are able to pursue happiness. The fifth one, not allowed to impose responsibility for the past actions of members of the same racial group. So you have somebody in a classroom now, go back 200 years, someone may look like them. They are not responsible, some first grader sitting in the classroom for that. And then finally, no classroom instruction on collective guilt for acts committed in the past. It's wrong to identify somebody who's just a young kid going to school and saying they're guilty of things they had nothing to do with. So I don't think any of that, honestly, is that controversial. I think that that does prevent some of the ideology from getting in, which is really what we're trying to do. But on its face, I would very, very much doubt that you would find very many people who could stand up and make a case. But that's why you have things like this hoax, because they don't want to argue on the merits. And so they want to have this stuff with this AP course that has a lot of the ideology. That's what they want to have in there. But they don't want to have to argue all this on the merits. They want to be able to say, oh, no, Florida's not allowing to teach black history, all this. They want to try to do that because they think they're on better ground. Well, they're lying, and so that's not really good ground to be on, but they can't defend their positions on the merits, and so that's why you have this situation. You also have, in terms of the pornographic material, there were reports saying, oh, teachers are so worried, they may end up being charged with a third-degree felony for having books in their classroom. And just understand, that has nothing to do with the Stop Woke Act, has nothing to do with anything we've done since. There is just a long-standing Florida law, has nothing to do with even schools versus not schools. Long-standing Florida law says that it's unlawful for adults to provide pornography for minors. Does anybody disagree with that? Do we want to be in a situation where, of course not. So when they're citing that law, acting like somehow that's chilling what's going on in the library, it's been the law for a long time. I don't think it's ever been appropriate in the history of Florida for adults to be providing pornography to minors. And so that's just, that's the law, that's just, it is what it is. And I think that most people believe that we should keep it that way. They've also tried to say, because they say, oh, they're having to empty the libraries, they're having to cover books because of this and all this other thing. And that's a hoax as well. The Department of Education, when this was starting to go out, they said, okay, tell us what you've actually done. Have there been books in a library, classroom, media center, whatever, that were pornographic or that didn't meet state standards? And so they were able to survey all the districts, and I think a lot of districts never had any problem, right? I mean, I think, but some did. 87% of the books that were identified as school districts as being problematic, they were pornographic, violent, or inappropriate for the grade level in some other manner. That's 87%. That's the bare minimum. And then there was a single school district that had 19 books that had violated the standards, but 94% of those books were removed from media centers. They weren't even in the classroom libraries, which is a good thing to do. And so there have been 23 districts that have had violations, mostly involving pornographic material, but the Department of Education went to, I think it was Duval County, said, hey, wait a minute, you have a beef with Hank Aaron or Roberto Clemente, where are you getting this? Why can't we learn about that? Where in our law does it say? And of course, they didn't have an answer. I said, no. We're not taking Hank Aaron out. We're not taking Roberto Clemente out. And, look, if our kids only learned about Roberto Clemente and Hank Aaron, I think they'd probably do okay if you just studied their lives. So that's a hoax. That's a false narrative that they're trying to do. And when you were in, I know Duval County, what they did was they kind of waited to even indulge and follow the law for a long time. And so you ended up with a situation where kind of at the end of the period when they said, oh, we got to take all these books and review and all this stuff. And that wasn't necessary the way they did it. They chose to do it, I think, to try to get more maximum impact in terms of what we've been able to accomplish. And so we're going to hear from some other folks who are in this fight. But I think at the end of the day, we need to make sure that our education system is bringing us together. When you start putting that garbage that you saw in there, that is wrong. It's also very, very divisive for the community because parents look at that and they feel like they're sending their kids to a place that is waging war against their own basic values. And we can't have that in the state of Florida. So I'm glad that these folks are working on this. We're happy to be here to be able to say these reports, and we were cataloging them in real time, and you see them even on national television. They will say things like, Florida does not want students to know that there was slavery in the United States, which is just an absolute lie. And are they not doing the 2 minutes of research to go? I mean, you can go on our Department of Education website. They list all this stuff out. Or is it just, the narrative is too good to check and they just want to go ahead and do it? Yeah, they know guys like me will come by and debunk that, and a lot of people will then look and see, okay, well, if it's in Florida law, why is MSNBC or somebody saying this? And some people will then say, yeah, you can't trust them, but very few people trust these people anyways now as it is. And so I think they're preaching to the choir, trying to they could just get it to take hold amongst a small segment, then basically they think that mission will have been accomplished. But we're going to fight back. We're going to make sure we're speaking the truth. But the important thing is not that there's, that the hoax is there in and of itself and these are false narratives. I mean, that is important, but it's a false narrative in service of trying to use the schools for an inappropriate purpose. And so ultimately, it's the well-being of our kids that is at stake here, and we're going to continue to put parents and students first. We believe it's important, and we look forward to being able to continue that.